Hey guys, Mel and I are on our way to go to an auction to buy an apartment, hopefully. So I thought this video might be of some use to people who are interested in buying property and my take on property. So there's a lot of different ways to buy property, and there's a lot of different strategies of why you should and shouldn't buy property. My particular strategy is I prefer to buy really good quality property that doesn't need any improvements, that doesn't need any work done to it. It's just a buy and forget it. That's what I'm looking for. I don't want to buy something and I have to renovate it or knock it down or do anything. I don't have time for that, because the value of my time is best spent in my business, and everything else for the investments, which is necessary, is I don't get the return on it. So if you have any kind of success at all, you'll get to a stage where you have to use the money that you have and put it into something. And the three most popular things that people put it into are property, shares, and bonds. And I used to have a very big bond portfolio, and then during COVID, I couldn't sell it. So bonds are great and everything else, but when it actually came time to liquidate some things during COVID, no one was buying bonds. So I was stuck with the bonds. I eventually got out of everything and made a profit, but if I needed to get liquid and desperate time, bonds was not the answer. So I kind of got off bonds now and try and focus on shares and property. So the way I look at property is I'm looking for yield. So I'm trying to be, very discerning in the way that I look at property. It's a very logical decision. It's a dispassionate, unemotional decision. And it's got to hit certain criteria. So the property that we're going to look at right now is in a desirable area. It's near a very large CBD, which is Brisbane. And historically, the median price of units or apartment in that area have increased in value by about 5% per year. So how the calculation would work for me anyway is this. Imagine you bought an apartment for $1 million in cash, and that apartment brought you in $50,000 per year. That would be 5%. $50,000 of $1 million is 5%. But you will have expenses. So you might have rates, water, you might have garden. If it's in a communal complex, you would have some kind of fees, body corporate fees. So from the 50,000 that you earn from that, you might have to lay out, for example, $20,000. So you bought it for $1 million, made $100,000 for the year, and you have to lay out, so you make $50,000, you lay out $20,000, you're left with $30,000, right? So from the 50, you're now left with 30. So your yield, how much money you can distribute to yourself before tax, would be 3%. So $30,000 of $1 million is 3%. So for really good quality property, you're looking at somewhere between 3 and 6%. And you can, like I say, I'm not looking for property where I have to improve it to get a higher yield and more profit. I'm looking for a turnkey solution. So a turnkey solution at the moment is somewhere 5%, around about 5% yield is a good yield for very good quality property. The property that we're going to see just now, so the area itself has had a reasonable growth each year. And we know historically that we can expect to earn $600 per week for that apartment if we're lucky enough to buy it. So given those calculations, right, so we know how much we think it is going to cost, how much it's going to earn minus how much the expenses are will give me a yield. So when I go to the auction, I know how much to bid. So if I get it for 600,000 or below, the yield will work out to be somewhere just under 5%, about 4.8%. If it goes above 600,000, the yield will come down, the profit will come down. And there's a point at which it doesn't make any sense. So right now, you can get 3 or 4% on cash deposits. So you've got to have a more valuable asset. So it's got to make more than what you can compare it with. But the funny thing about auctions are, I bought a property at auction, and I was studying the best way to buy properties at auctions. I just Googled it. I looked at a whole bunch of YouTube videos, and 68%, anywhere here in Australia, 68% of people who start the bidding at an auction win the auction. So in that particular auction, I started the bidding, and it started at 500,000. There was about 20 people there, and eventually it landed up with only 3 bidders: myself, another person, and somebody on the telephone. And it got all the way up to 720,000. And then the bids started coming down to $1,000 increments. It started off in 50,000s, and then 25,000 and 20, and then all the way down. So people were, the 3 bidders were bidding in $1,000 increments. And it got up to, I could see the whole thing was slowing down. And the person that I was with said to me, "You've got it now. Just go up another 1,000." And we were sitting around about 200 and 730,000. And I jumped from 730 to 750. And it threw the last remaining bidder into confusion, who was on the telephone, because it was an unusual way to do it. Because usually we just, the incremental bids would decrease until you had a winner. But because I made a big jump, it kind of threw him off, and I won that particular auction for $750,000. That's good and well, and that was a good investment. And the reason why that particular investment was good was there was a house to the right that was worth about 2.4 million, and a house to the left that was worth about 2.5 million. And the land itself was worth 750,000. So I got a good deal, right? So even if I knocked the existing house down and built a brand new house, I would still be in profit. You do get situations, and this happened to Mel and I a couple of weeks ago. We went to see a property, we did all our homework. Both of us estimated that property would be worth about 550,000. So we went there, we registered for the auction, and immediately the first bid was like 500,000, and it went straight through what we valued at the property at. And if you get a situation where somebody either doesn't understand the numbers, or they want to live in that property so they don't care how much it costs, if they've decided that that apartment or that property is worth X in their head, you can't really contend with that. So if you're ever at an auction, you got to know your numbers, and you got to know your cutoff point, and don't get carried away with the auction, because you might get people there who are bidding for whatever reason that way past what would be logical. So the property that we're going to see now, we've figured out that we think is worth 600,000. In this particular auction, my strategy is actually not to start the auction, because I have a feeling it's going to start quite high. So, and if I'm allowed to video, I will, and if not, I'll see what I can do, but so that you can see the process of buying something. And I don't know how many registered bidders there are there. But my point is this: if you're going to invest in property, and property is not my main thing, but if you're going to invest in property, You've got to look at it as an investment, and the investment is going to make sense. So that you've got to compare the yield, the money that you would make with this property against other things that you can invest in. It might be deposits in banks, it might be shares, it might be wherever it is. If you're building your portfolio, you want to fill that portfolio with good quality stuff. So stay tuned for part 2, and when we get to the other side, I'll do a little video for you there. Thanks for listening. Hi guys, this is the day after the auction, and it was an interesting auction. So my kind of strategy for going to the auction was to either start the auction in the mid 500s or observe what was happening and then make a decision if I was going to enter the auction later on. Just from the vibe in the room, I could see there was about 25 people, but only 4 people had registered. And of the 4, I wasn't quite sure whether to start the auction or not. So I thought I'd just hold back a little bit. And what happened was quite interesting. So I thought the auction was going to start around about the $550,000 mark and then progress from there. And what I had intended to do was to come into the auction round about the $600,000 mark, depending on what happened, with a top level amount of $610,000. That's what made sense for a property that earns that much in rental. The yield, to get to the yield of 4.5% to 5%, that's where I would position that property. The very first bid was $620,000. So that took me out the game straight away. And it was very interesting because there were 3 bidders really, and the one bidder kind of fell out, and then the guy who started the auction continued, and then just as it looked like the auction was winding down, round about the $800,000 mark, another bidder came in right at the end. And that happens a lot. A lot of people will wait till the hammer, is going once, it's going twice, and on that twice, they will come in. And this lady came in at that point. And then the guy tried a tactic that I've used before, which is quite interesting. He took it from 800 to about 820,000 and then asked the auctioneer if he could reduce his bidding by increments to 1,000. And the auctioneer said fine, and he started bidding then, and the lady started coming back with him, so they were doing this dance. Then from nowhere, he went from about 825 to 830. So after bidding in $500 increments, he made this huge jump, which threw the woman. She wasn't quite sure what to do. And I've used that tactic myself, where normally people, when they start reducing the increments that they bid in, then you're coming close to how much money that your opposition has got. So he made this jump, the woman couldn't compete, and he won the auction, and it closed at $835,000. I can't make sense of that, so it would give him a yield of about 2.5%. Now, do you want to invest $825,000 to get 2.5%? Maybe. I think it's more likely that he bought the property for himself. So when people buy property at auction or at any time for themselves, the logic can go out the window. If somebody really likes something and they have the budget, they'll do it. They'll buy something that I would never buy. And for me, I might look at 10, 20, 30 different properties, go to 10, 20, 30 different auctions. I'm not going to buy unless I get the right deal. When I buy a business, I'll on average look at over 100 different businesses and go through 100 different financials before I'll make an offer. Because, you need the right deal. So there's an old saying in Scotland that a thing well bought
is a thing well sold. So if you buy it well, when you comes times to sell it, you're going to make a profit. I hope that helps somebody. If you like these tips and you like my strategies for investing, then give us a like, subscribe, and give me some feedback. Thanks for listening.